figured out the dimensions before I even drew on the paper by dividing all my yards by 16, which gave me my scale. My scale is 1/16 of an inch is equal to 1 yard, or in better terms, 16 yards is equal to an inch. Then I created intersecting line segments from one corner of the paper, from one corner to another of the paper, which helped me find the intersection in the middle of the paper, which created perpendicular line segments. I knew since the halfway line would run through the center marker, also known as the midpoint, that would help me center my outer field. So my intersecting line segments, as you can see, these faint X lines, which match up with my center mark. Once I found the intersection, I had to make sure all my outer lines were centered, and I did that by measuring the touch line, which is an inch away from the paper. And then I created my goal line, which is also an inch away from the paper. After that, the lines just followed the same pattern because I did length times width. So I created one corner of the box, which one of my crowns was 90 degrees. So I created perpendicular line segments. And then it just followed. This other goal line is also an inch, and this other touch line is also an inch. I used that to set the rough shape of the rectangle for the outer field. The touch line was created first and soon after the goal line. For the parallel touch lines, I could choose from any number between 100 and 130, so I chose 120, which converts to 7.5 for my scale. As you can see, touch line 120, my two parallel touch lines. I used the website provided and found that the goal line could be a max of 130 yards, and I chose to do 100 yards, which when converted became 6.25 of an inch. As you can see up here, my goal lines, which are also parallel. When those were completed, I drew the circumference of my center circle, which the radius was originally 10 yards, which then I converted to 5/8 of an inch. This is my center circle with a radius of 10 yards, or 5/8 of an inch. And the center is my center mark. The next part was the goalpost, which I didn't have to include, but I decided to include. My goalpost measured 8 yards in width, which is 1/2 of an inch, as shown right here. But I had to translate, that was the width, and now I had to figure out the height, and then using the website provided, I figured out that the height of the goalpost had to be 8 feet, but I had to convert yards into inches. So I converted 8 feet into yards, which is 2.67 yards. And then, as usual, I would divide it by 16ths, but this time I divided it and it came out to 267 over 1,600, which isn't as easy to find on a ruler, as you know. This caused me to do a little more math, since 267 by 1,600 yards in decimal form is 0.166875, and since my scale is in 16ths, I figured out that 3/16 is equal to 0.1875, and that is the closest decimal I could get to the original one. The only difference is 0.020625. But then it was a matter of centering my goalpost, so I lined up my center mark to touch the goal line. To touch the goal line, and the mark I used to bisect my goalpost, since it was 1/2 of 1/2, I cut it in half, and as you know, that equals 1/4, and measured both sides from the mark to be 1/4 of an inch away. So from this mark, this is 1/4 of an inch away, and this mark is also 1/4 of an inch away, and it's the same thing for down here. And then after that, I created my penalty area, which as labeled here is this little outer box. After I created my penalty area, which is 18 yards or 1 1/8 of an inch away from the goalpost on both sides, as shown down here. So it's 1 1/8 of an inch away from the goalpost on both sides. When you have made the marks from your distance, which is 1 1/8, you can draw a vertical line straight above that is also 18 yards or 1 1/8 of an inch. After you have made both vertical lines, you can draw a straight horizontal connecting line to complete your penalty area. And I did the same for the other side. Then I created the goal area, which is down here, which is 6 yards or 3/8 of an inch away from the goalpost on both sides. As shown here, it is 3/8 of an inch from the goalpost from here and 3/8 of an inch away from the other side. And then I made sure to mark the distance on both sides, so it's just a little dot on both sides. And then I made sure to mark it. When you have made your mark, you can draw a vertical line that is also 6 yards or 3/8 of an inch long on both sides. From there, you can draw a horizontal line connecting both vertical lines. So as you can see here, I drew 3/8 of an inch up on both sides, and a straight horizontal line is connecting them. My next step was to create the penalty mark, and I had to make sure the penalty mark was 12 yards or 3/4 of an inch away from where I originally bisected the goalpost. I originally bisected the goalpost to center it, and from there I took the middle point of the goalpost and measured 12 yards or 3/4 of an inch away, and I marked my penalty mark. And then I drew a faint line that was 3/4 of an inch away, and I marked it, and that's how I got my penalty mark, or my penalty point. One of the last things I drew was the penalty arc, and that has to be 10 yards or 5/8 of an inch away from the penalty mark. So I drew a faint straight line up, and I marked it, which is a straight faint line that's 5/8 of an inch away from the penalty mark. And then from there, I marked the end of the line, and then I used my compass right here to rotate it and make sure it was touching the penalty area. So I put the needle part on the penalty mark, and then I put my pencil on the point I created that is meant to represent a point on the penalty arc. Put my pencil, and then I rotated it to touch the penalty area, and then I did the same thing to the other side. Lastly, I made the corner area. As you can see here, I made the corner area. The radius of all of those had to be 1 yard or 1/16 of an inch, and I did that for all corners. And to make sure I drew my drawing correctly, one of my last steps, I measured across from one corner to the other and made intersecting line segments to make sure all my corners were 90 degrees, which is one of my requirements. So I took my ruler, I measured across from the corner area to the other corner area, and that is 9 3/4. And then I did the same thing for the other side, which is also 9 3/4 of an inch on both sides. And that is how I created my version of the soccer field.